Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today I'm going to show you my ring. My trim ring from FLARESPACE, that is. Now then, I am using the trim rings supplied by FLARESPACE. I ordered them at the same time as I ordered the flares, or should I say as my buddy ordered the flares, because he made the order for me. So the first thing all of you are going to say is, how much does it cost? Because you probably think you can make something like this in your own little workshop, and you probably can. I think the trim rings come out at about $600, but what I will say is if you order them at the same time as you order your flares, they put them in the same box, so it's not $600 plus the $500 it costs to send it, plus the VAT receipt that you might get through the post, that kind of thing. It goes in the same box as your flares. So for me, I treated it as a complete price. I got the price of the flares, got the price of the ring, put it together. Does it matter if you say you're getting the trim ring for free? If you put it all under one umbrella, that is the cost. I wanted FLARESPACE because I think they're the best ones about, and I wanted the trim rings for all of the following reasons. Now, I am positive that there are a lot of enthusiastic van builders out there, joiners by trade, that kind of thing, that are more than willing and more than capable to build this kind of thing in their workshop. Absolutely fine. Andy over at Ep8 Adventures, he built his first set of trim rings because he did not order the rings from FLARESPACE, thought he'd give it a go. He has allowed me to show you the following photo. That's from his Instagram. He has an eye to detail that just doesn't compare with anyone I know. So that is what it takes to make the perfect trim ring. Now, what I will say is you do have to buy some material anyway, whether or not it be ply, if you want to go down the fiberglass route, which is obviously really labour intensive. It takes a lot of time, which is probably the biggest reason why I didn't. And as you can see from the photo, it takes about £1,000 worth of clamps, which I don't have. I do not have the space. Time is of the essence for me. So it is more than worth it for me to buy the correct product once again, without being too personal. I would find it easier to go to work doing my trade and pay for something like this. Plumbing is easier than creating something like this, and I can assure you that. I'm going to take you for a closer look, see what you think, see if you think that you could build one of these, and perhaps you have. If you have, send me some pictures over on Instagram. I'd love to see them. For me, no, and I'm going to show you why. Also, I would like to say, don't go ahead and skip. You may not want trim rings in your van, you may not have flares, you may not be sleeping sideways, all of that, but in today's video you are going to see a few tips and tricks on how to upholster around radiuses. You're going to see more in depth on how I've used the closed cell foam and the materials I'm using to stick them, that kind of thing. So there is hints and tips and tricks on fixing wall panels back to your van wall. Even though you might not be having trim rings, I feel this video could potentially have a lot of little tips and tricks just regarding van building and upholstery in general. So please stick around, stay tuned, make a brew and join me. So I just got this trim on the trestle here. Now I will try my hardest to explain how odd the shape of this is. Now this is cut to size. I'm going to show you that in a minute. The next piece of footage that follows this is going to be a prequel before I've cut this, but this is ready to go in. Ignore this scratch. This, I actually went ahead and started foaming it before I realized I hadn't made this content, so I removed it, and God, does this stuff stick. So it doesn't come like that. It comes lovely and fresh like this in a gel coat. You could actually spray that. It is ready to be spray painted. That's not what I'm doing. Anyway, as you can see, because the flare gets bigger the further it goes back, so straight away, this is probably about 2.5 inches. That raises probably to 4 inches. So that's one consideration. The other consideration is the big belly that's within the flare itself. Not only that, and what I would probably have found the most annoying is the surface of the flare itself isn't totally flat. It's concaved like this. I didn't even notice that until I finished it and put it up in the wall. You can see that this bends with the shape of the van. So what I mean by that is, obviously I thought ahead and thought, can I produce this? You would think that you could cut out of, say, a thicker piece of ply, maybe like a 12mm. You could use that as the face of your van. As the face, as this piece here. Well, you couldn't, because that in itself has got a curvature to it. So cutting the shape out of a sheet of ply and then putting an internal piece in it, even that wouldn't be good enough, because it would be proud in the middle, or too shallow at the top. It just wouldn't work. It honestly, when you've got this in position, you'll see how truly odd the shape of this is. It's I wouldn't want to make this. I just genuinely wouldn't want to make this. And like I've just said, it would be far easier to just go to work doing what I know how to do, because plumbing is easy. It's just water Lego, and then just pay for something like this. Just once again, just pay the correct people. Now then, let's take a look at it. The trim ring actually comes oversized, and what I mean by that is it's actually too deep for the application that I'm using it for the way that I've showed you, because there are two ways, I suppose, that you can fit this. You can panel around this ring a bit like I have, so you only actually see the internal side of this, or you can actually cut a hole, don't have to be too perfect, and plant this straight over the top. The problem I see with that is I don't think it looks as nice personally, and I'm using the No Way Stretch tweed fabric, and I can't personally I can't make both of those surfaces look lovely and seamless as I possibly can, because I'm not an upholsterer. So the way I'm doing it is I'm actually having this mounted internally, so we only actually see this internal shape. But if you wanted to, you could literally just plant that straight over the top, and if you were going to spray it or wrap it in some kind of material, that is totally an option. So moral of that is, it's too deep. Also, I've chosen to put 12mm foam on the flare itself, 2 layers of 6mm closed cell foam. It'll help with insulation, give it a nice good cushion. So once again, when I put this where it needs to be, it sits proud, like further out than the wall itself. So we need to cut it back. There is modifications that need to be made, not a hell of a lot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by ensuring the fit of this is as good as possible, regardless of depth. So what I mean is, at the moment, even when I put this in, it doesn't actually fit perfectly. There's some parts that need chopping back so that it sits lovely all the way around. Then, once I'm happy that it sits correct, basically all I'm going to do is measure how much proud it is, draw a line around the inside, continuous, say a 20mm continuous line, zip that off, Bob's your uncle. So I'll take you in for a better look, guys. Here we are. So here's what we're looking at. The trim ring fits lovely. So this shape here is absolutely perfect. That never needs to be touched. But what I was trying to explain, I've got a little bit of tape there. I'm trying to hold it and do camera work. What I was trying to explain is this, there's a gap big enough there that I can put my finger behind. In case you wanted this to overclad as opposed to sit on the internal side of it. That's what I was trying to explain. Cut, say, the 10-15mm off that it needs, and then I know it can push back into the hole correctly. So for example, here is touching, but here isn't. So you think, oh, that bit's good. Well, it isn't. In fact, that bit's actually too big. So I'm going to run the pencil down through there, do all the necessary trimming to sink that back so it's totally, as best I can, seamless. This fits in the hole exactly where we want it. Everything's great. We want to board this wall and we want to cut this perfectly flush with the trim ring. So how do we know exactly where this is? Now, because if you lift this up or push it to the left by 15 mil or even 10 mil, the whole thing would be incorrect and you would have upholstered it and it looked horrible. So the only way I could figure was to actually tape it in place. So make sure you're happy with its location. So, for all intents and purposes, that is exactly where our trim ring is going to sit. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay my wall covering over the top, which is totally complete. It hasn't got any holes cut out or anything like that. It's just a full panel. And then I'm going to fire a couple of screws through the board into the trim ring. Yeah, so I'm going to organise my panel so it's in exactly where I want it. And then I'm going to screw it to the trim ring. Then I'm just going to remove that panel totally separate because obviously this is taped to it and I wouldn't be able to take it off. But when I put it back on my trestles, I will know I'll have screw holes in this that are through my panel, so I'll screw it back to it and then use a router and it'll look mint. I know it'll look mint because I've already done one. Sweet. Sweet. Now just got to make it look pretty. Just like the ceiling panels that I've done, I'm using a 6mm closed-cell foam. I'll put the link to that down below. It just gives everything that bit more plush look to it. Looks absolutely lovely, looks spongy, looks inviting, looks absolutely great. Now, because I'm only revealing the internal section of this will have the wall planted onto it. I'm actually going to cut it off flush with this section here. So we're going to glue it internally, but then what I've decided to do is actually wrap it round the edge of the flare, just so that it gives it that continuous spongy look, if that makes sense. Now what I mean by that is this is fiberglass, and with all the will in the world, it's not a perfect fit. It just can't be. But if this has got that foam wrapped around it, when you push that flare into the flare space, I mean the trim ring into the flare space itself, it's basically sponge hits sponge, because I've also foamed the flare itself. And it will just take up any kind of discrepancies. Well, that's the idea anyway. It just soft on soft as opposed to that harder material. So I'm actually going to wrap it around the back of the trim ring. Obviously, with the adhesive, you do both sides. Give it a couple of seconds, and then it'll pretty much stick to it. And this sticks like poo to a blanket, I tell you. there is going to be a couple of joins in my foam. Now the reason for that is I didn't want to cut off 4.5 meters, which would probably be the total diameter. Circumference, be the total circumference. So I've actually cut like 200mm strips off of my roll, and I know this for a fact. As long as you butt the pieces together, as long as you butt these pieces together nicely, you'll never see it. You'll never ever see it. And the great thing, once again, about cutting 200mm strips off of the roll is the bits that you butt together end up being the factory cut off of the roll, because your roll is, you know, it's got quite a lovely square edge on the top, so you're always touching that square edge with the next square edge, so it's absolutely fine. As long as you cut it tight enough, you will not see it. I like to use the blade of a box cutter, literally, not the American slang for a Stanley knife. I literally mean like a box cutter, because it's sharp all the way, and it's long and precise. You'd never get like a Stanley knife in there accurate enough, but the length of that will seamlessly cut that off. Now I'm actually just going to show you this corner section, because all 4 corners will be exactly the same. I don't want to waste too much time by showing you the same thing 4 times, so I'm going to do this one corner. I'm going to flip this over and show you how I attack the back. Probably got too much overhang at the moment, so I'm just going to cut some of that off. Tiny bit of advice as well, buy yourself a nice sharp pair of scissors. These are only about 15-20 quid on Amazon. Use them for upholstery only. Never cut a piece of paper. As soon as you cut a piece of paper with these, they won't be blunt, but they won't be what they were. Absolutely great. Honestly, worth their weight in gold. Get yourself a nice sharp pair of scissors. Don't just rob the ones from your kitchen drawer, because they won't be sharp enough. Now then, to overlap this, what you need to do, get yourself your sharp knife. Think about where the radius starts. So it's absolutely flat up until about there and up until about there. And then I'm going to cut down there just before I hit the fiberglass itself. Don't cut until it hits the fiberglass. Like, don't hit that. Just leave a tiny little bit, because you want that section there to spread over the fiberglass itself. So put one down there and one down there. And then basically, we just want a series of cuts. I'm using it like a saw. You just want a series of cuts on that radius. 20, maybe 25mm. And that will just then allow that to fan over that corner. So it is a brand new day and it is a wet one. So I've brought you into my indoor workshop. Please don't tell the wife. She doesn't watch these videos, so she'll never know. But it does also mean that it's 21 degrees. So the wall panel has been covered in foam, basically glued both sections, butt them together, nice sharp blade, cut around the edges. The same with the trim ring, like you saw. Now the beauty of the way that I'm doing it is you upholster both sections totally separate, and then you butt them together using the same fixings that I use for the ceiling, the 6mm nylon bolts. So the upholstery side of this task isn't actually all that complicated. If you join them together first and then try to upholster it, well, that is way above my pay grade. So I am going to upholster this, upholster the trim ring, and I'll show you how. And then, yeah, like I say, just butt them together. Right then, guys, let's get this corner upholstered. I'll show you the simple version, which is the only one I know, and I assume if you're watching this video, that's the one you want to see. There might be a better way of doing it, but here's the way I know from a non-upholsterer. So we're going to cover both areas, both sides in glue. I'm going to try and prevent my kitchen getting covered. We're going to give that a couple of seconds. Now what we're going to do is we're going to slowly, from each end, bring in the straight edges like this. The back doesn't necessarily matter if it's kinked or wrinkled, as long as you're pulling this nice and taut around this corner. Now then, as you bring these two corners in, you'll see this corner actually flare up like that. Now what you want to do, you want to bring them together until they almost touch like that. Then you want to get your nice sharp scissors and almost lay them on the panel and cut across both pieces until you get probably about 10mm to the actual corner where it actually folds back on itself. And then you're going to turn the piece of fabric and chop the other way, so you end up with something that looks a little bit like that. Now it will be trying to glue itself together with the excess glue. So you'll peel those two apart, so you end up with a lovely little flap like that. And then all we're going to do, because this area here shouldn't even have any glue on it yet, this probably has, but we're just going to shoot a piece of glue across both sections like this. Once again, I'm covering it up. Now all we're going to do is grab this section here, pull that nice and tight, and that there you can probably see is actually stretching as much as this will allow. That is stretching that corner nice and tight, so I know for a fact when I turn this over that corner will be absolutely lovely. Now then, time to do an internal. This is an internal but also a radius. So always cut off all of the excess, leaving about 2 inches. Now if you leave too much, it actually becomes more of a becomes more of a hindrance than a help, if I'm honest. So you only want about 2 inches to fold back over. Now how I'm going to do this is I'm going to treat this up until the point of the radius as a flat section, treat that up to the point of a radius as a flat section, and then a bit like I did with the foam, I'm going to cut in but leave in 5 to 10mm, loads of like pizza shaped pieces, and that will allow me then to peel them over a bit like a fan, each individual piece. Now the reason you leave that 10mm is because it's that piece that is actually going to cover the cross section of the foam and the ply. That is absolutely wicked. I can already see from this angle that that is stretched around there lovely. That is a lovely radius, so you create this almost like this sun effect. You probably noticed, hopefully, that when I folded this section over, I quickly whipped in there with the scissors. What you don't want is for this section to be long enough that it covers that section, because then that is a double thickness and it may create a bit of a wave in your wall panel, or it might not sit correctly. So you only want this to be wrapped over once. Now I'm going to do this on all 4 corners, and then the fixing holes that I've created before, that was a dog snorting by the way, the fixing holes that I created before, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pierce through from the rear through the fabric and then mark the other side, because it will totally disappear. I could almost push these scissors through and it would totally disappear. So I'm going to mark them so I know where to push the bolts through. We are going to use Velcro, the real deal. And it's, even while it's quite expensive, it still isn't as sticky as I would hope, especially as the van is going to get hot, cold, damp, hot, cold, damp, that kind of thing. So all we're going to do is take the Velcro, hook on one side, loop on the other, obviously, it doesn't matter which way around. And we are going to use contact adhesive, treat it a bit like the carpet. I'm going to spray the back of the Velcro, spray the back of the board, stick it to it, it just gives it that extra bite. It's finally stopped raining, so this brings us back inside, where I'm going to stick the alternate version to the wall in the appropriate places. Basically, it's down both sides and a little bit across the bottom. Now, a lot of the time, units and pieces of furniture and the kitchen and things are going to clamp most of this back. The Velcro is just a bit of an extra gesture, really, and it was more pronounced in the other side where the units actually stop, just something to make sure that panel stays flat against the wall. So here we go. Voila, it is in. Once again, I didn't put any fixings across the bottom of either side because my bed is so well fitted that it won't actually allow for it. So that is going to be a nice tight squeeze as it is. That will help push the flares out that way. Got units going all along the top here. That will hold that in. It will pull the ceiling up where there isn't any fixings at the end, that kind of thing. So with the Velcro behind there and the fixings that I've got going in, that'd be absolutely lovely. I'll take you for a look in a minute. The one thing I will say, let me take you off of here, is on this side I actually brought a power point down through. I'm going to put a reading light up on there within the FLARESPACE itself. That'd be absolutely great. But it looks absolutely beautiful. I don't mind these fixings. I think it looks absolutely great. I think that gives it that bolt-on look. You know, I've used bolt-on, you know, the theory of the bolt-on with the ceiling, and you know, the conduit is still bolt-on and quite rugged. I quite like that. So I'm totally happy with that. I'll add some more shots of this towards the end here, but please subscribe. I'm gonna leave you now because this video has gone way too longer than I wanted it to be. Subscribe, hit the like button, do leave a comment, and I'll see you next Tuesday.